You know, I'm over here watching John on DF Retro talk about a Sega Saturn game that I've never seen before. It's called Power Slave by Lobotomy Software, and it's a first-person shooter released in 1996. I was 7 years old at the time, so I was not playing Power Slave that year. I just wasn't. I'm a first-person shooter junkie. I almost exclusively enjoy that genre. And yeah, I believe they work better on PC because mouse. Anyways, Power Slave ends up on PC, the original PlayStation, as well as Saturn. The MS-DOS version uses the build engine, which is what Duke Nukem 3D runs on. But for the home console ports, Lobotomy Software developed their own fully 3D game engine known as Slave Driver, and decided to create Power Slave with new levels for the Saturn and PS1. Lobotomy Software was a group of Nintendo of America employees that were friends and left to start their own game company. Lobotomy's take on the then popular 3D-inspired Doom clones of the day, Power Slave ends up being quite the underrated masterpiece, not just for its non-linear gameplay, but for the Slave Driver engine, powering the entire experience on console. Slave Driver, as a game engine, is apparently one of the best things to ever happen to the Sega Saturn. After the success of Power Slave, it was even used to port Duke Nukem 3D and Quake to the Saturn. The Sega Saturn is in fact a 2D powerhouse, but notorious for struggling with 3D polygonal graphics. Lobotomy Software stepped up and proved the entire industry wrong that year. I'm learning all this amazing information about the Saturn and how it handles 3D, and all I can think of is, how have I never heard of Power Slave? I must play this game immediately. So we hit up eBay. Only 2 listings for the Saturn version? 143 bucks? 120 bucks with no artwork? Should we just play the PS1 version? $1,000? I have to play this game. There's just no way around it. Like, I need to know what's up. Should we emulate it?
We should just mod a SEGA Saturn and figure out how to play it on a console.
You're right. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try and soft mod a SEGA Saturn and see if we can get Power Slave up and running on it. And I think we're gonna do that now. Let's go. So let's see what we got here. So these are 2 Model 1 Sega Saturns, and they are both 23 years old. They look like they are in great condition. Actually, this one looks like it's missing a reset button, so you know how plastic do. We got 2 Model 1 Sega Saturn controllers. These are actually in great condition for how old they are. It doesn't really look like too many Virtua Fighter 2 matches have been played on them, fortunately for us. These dropped in May of 1995 and went up against the PS1 and the N64. What bugged me as a kid growing up was the internal storage of these things. You can save games directly to the Saturn if you have a working 3-volt onboard battery. Sad fact about these things, if you have saved games on here, you'll lose them every 1 to 3 years when these batteries die. Very, very silly. We just found a North American disc image of Power Slave, which came wirelessly from somewhere in the world to this laptop and now onto this disk drive. Next question is, how do we get the Saturn to read this disc? The way copy protection works on the console is when the Saturn boots up and checks for a disc, it looks for this security ring here to verify the license and all that, and then boots into whatever software. We found this repo on GitHub called Pseudo Saturn by Cyber Warrior X. We're gonna flash his code onto a memory expansion card like this action replay and bypass the security process. I just used about 1 megabyte on this entire disk, by the way, not a waste. Let's go ahead and get this thing opened up. One in the back there. Let's see, was that all? All right. Got the top popped off. So this is what the inside of a Sega Saturn looks like, by the way, if you've never taken a look at it. Power button, reset button. What I came in here to do is modify this switch right here. What this thing right here does on the motherboard is tells the Saturn that the disk drive is closed, which we want to completely bypass that little feature with a piece of tape. Real quick, I'm gonna test and see if this actually works, if it actually thinks that there's a disk in the drive. Yes, so it looks like the Saturn thinks it's closed, which means what I'm about to do now is gonna work. All right, this is gonna be interesting. What we have to do now is use the legendary swap trick to get this Sega Saturn to boot off the pseudo Saturn installer disk and flash the action replay. This is something that takes immense skill and proper timing to pull off, and that's what I hope to bring to the table today. To start, we need a region-specific North American game disc like this one to match the region of the Saturn, and we need a copy of the software that we are trying to boot into. All right, so First thing that this thing's gonna do is probably ask for the time because there's no battery in it, so I'm just gonna say English, and look, we're in 1994. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm gonna wait for it to spin down. Will it boot? Yep, it booted. All right, so now I'm gonna hit reset, drop it in there. Okay, cool, so this is good. Boom, SEGA Saturn installer. One try, baby. Swap trick master. Okay, so now we can take the action replay and stick it in the back. I'm gonna go ahead and shut this door just in case. So we've got some menu options here. Let's pull up the credits and see these fine people, what they, okay, so yeah, here's the SEGA Saturn team. This is their GitHub. It says press any button to go back. Cool, guys. Okay, so we are going to install firmware from disk onto the thing. It says, got the cart, rewriting the flash may damage your action replay. Press A, B, and C to continue. Press X to exit. I'm gonna press all 3 buttons. Wow, 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 wow. Okay, boom. So we got some action going on here. Writing flash. Just think of what's happening in here right now. Killing the SEGA Saturn, you know what I'm saying? Just murdering that shit. Bam. All right, press reset to finish. Boom. Very, very nice. Now, if everything has gone according to plan, we should be able to just pop Power Slave in here and see if it boots. So here goes. SEGA Saturn loader. So this is loading into RAM from the cart. We've got some options to start game. I think we're gonna start game. Ooh, ooh. Okay, so there's the SEGA license screen. That means that it worked. Boom. Our DP Ronin here, this is so this game is older than you are. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's no Xbox 360, it's no PlayStation 4. Humbling.
Just 10 minutes in and this game is sick. It feels like butter in my hands, hot butter. I see what John was saying on DF Retro. This is probably the game with the best graphics on the Saturn. You guys should definitely come over and play this. Cool little spiders for the enemies. This is like, the frame rate is so good. It's like a smooth 30 frames. I couldn't help it. I just had to pull down Quake and see how the conversion stacks up against the PC version. Okay. I can tell right off the bat this version runs at a slower frame rate than Power Slave, but that's probably because everything in Quake is a 3D polygon and Power Slave used sprites for weapon models and enemies. I'm glad that the original Nine Inch Nails soundtrack is fully intact though, a major plus for the Saturn version. I would probably actually rather play this than the Nintendo 64 version just because there's more detail in the textures here. There's one more game I want to pull down, and that's the Sega Ages compilation. This has a version of the original arcade game Outrun by Sega running at 60 frames per second on console. And I think I want to zone out for an hour and play this before I do anything else.
Get ready.
Well, this has been enlightening. I'm actually looking forward to spending more time with the SEGA Saturn now that I can play all the hits. No spoilers, but we just got an 8-bit microcomputer in the mail, and you're gonna have to subscribe to see which one we got when we drop that video tomorrow. I'm Ben Scarborough, and I'll see you all later in a 32-bit world. Peace.